Unicorn fam? Welcome to the Shadowforge and Twilight Tactics AMA. This is Sparkly Unicorn with Stealthy Unicorn on Tech. Keen-eyed members of the community might have noticed a Substack article that we released a couple of hours ago, and I bet y'all are excited about the implications. If Shadowcorn sales activity is anything to go by. The article shared information all about Shadowforge gameplay, and today we'll be talking about it as well as the partner event of Shadowforge for every cycle, Twilight Tactics. Tactics. Let's not delay this any longer. We have LG, Jeff, and Zyori to talk about Shadowforge and Twilight Tactics. Please take the stage. Good morning.
Good morning. Hello, everybody. Excited to be here and go through another one of these kind of reveal/AMA. I don't know exactly what the right name for these are, but the last few have been really great. I think Jeff and I have really enjoyed being able to get some of these ideas in front of the community, get some of your initial feedback, even if it's just a vote of confidence and like, hey, thumbs up, passes the gut check. It's really helpful for us. So really excited to be here and dive into Twilight Tactics. I feel like I've been tunnel visioned on this Shadowforge stuff because obviously big release day. It's been a whole week of heads down, just like get all this content, get the guides going, get the Git book updated. So I'm gushing for Shadowcorns a little bit. So I'll go ahead and pre-apologize. If you haven't read about the Shadowforge, definitely go check it out. I just want to say that the Shadowforge is sort of like the step 0 into Twilight Tactics. So they are very closely related. This is sort of the first integration. We're seeding this first round of minions. Then the idea is that this is going to be this kind of ongoing back and forth sort of event that operates through the battles, which we're calling Twilight Tactics. So super stoked to get into it. But Jeff, how are you today, buddy? You're always the mastermind behind these things. Are you ready to get into the nitty gritty per usual?
I am so ready, and I'd love to hear your feedback after this presentation. We're still in a phase with Twilight Tactics where if there's any concerns, we definitely can address them, but looking forward to sharing you all the details and looking forward to hearing feedback.
Absolutely. And per usual with this stuff, anything that is sort of like numbers and calibration, always stuff that we can change a little bit more easily. We love to hear your big ideas as well, but sometimes big ideas require big development commitments. But stuff like, hey, these numbers seem calibrated too strong this way or whatever, all that feedback is always a great kind of gut assessment for us at this stage as well. And also, I am on the presentation. Jeff is talking. We still have this weird Discord bug where he's unable to present. So just keep that in mind. We'll be playing tag here as I try to follow along. But hopefully you guys can see, the full screen here. And Jeff, I think we're ready to dive in anytime you're ready, bud.
Yeah, just one more disclaimer. Just like the numbers, don't pay attention to them. Same thing with the visuals that you're going to be seeing. Nothing is final. It's more sort of wireframes and not final art. So please, any visuals you see, don't really
Go
think
easy.
of that as final. Yeah.
We're trying to communicate the general concept here. This minion is final, though. Look at this cute guy. Look at that fire minion. I love it. Let the war between Shadowcorns and Unicorns commence.
Exactly. So just to do kind of a quick recap about the Shadowforge, which is being deployed today. In the Shadowforge, you'll stake your Shadowcorns to reap husks and ingredients. You could use those husks and ingredients to produce minions and items through rituals. You'll see everything that you have related to the Shadowforge in your inventory, including your Shadowcorns, minions, husks, and ingredients. And then finally, use Shadowforge keys and dark marks to upgrade your Shadowforge and get reaping bonuses. You think of the Shadowforge as like the Shadowcorns version of, the Unicorn's land, right? It's their base of operations. It's how they're going to build their army and eventually compete in Twilight Tactics against Unicorns.
Yeah, those silly little unicorns are a little more, Web 2 friendly, right? They stake into the protocol. They play through the game. Shadowcorns, man, they're hardcore Web 3. They play through the browser. It's wallets. It's transactions. As we'll talk about, one of the things that's really cool about some of these resources with Shadowforge is like the dark marks being soul-bound tokens, but they're still on the blockchain. So they have this dual benefit of kind of operating like a soft currency that can't be traded, right? You can only get it through participation of the game, but it's still on chain, right? So it still works with all these analytics tools. It's still very transparent. It still lets us leverage that transparency that we get from using the public database. So I think that's the first time we've introduced a currency like that, where it's like a soft currency that's also on chain. Please correct me if I'm wrong there, Jeff. But stuff like that, I think, is really, really a cool application here.
Yeah, the dark marks are the currency of the Shadowforge, but we've made them for balance purposes not non-tradable between players. They're ERC20s, but we're not giving them liquidity. We're not allowing them to trade, so they're soul bound to the Shadowforge. But other things will be tradable. Husks and minions are 1155, so you could buy and sell, as well as our ritual NFTs. So there's a lot of things that could be traded between players in the Shadowforge.
Yeah, it's great. All right, into Twilight Tactics.
Yes, so just like the other presentations, we like to kind of talk about our thinking and some of the design decisions that we made. For Twilight Tactics, we want to really highlight giving players a little more agency and kind of both how they think about how they want to play the game. So in the case of Twilight Tactics, Unicorn players will be able to choose their opponent from a selection of minion squads to attack. So they'll have knowledge about what are their potential enemies and select the one that they think they're most likely to beat. And that there'll also be bonuses and other things that players can look and consider when choosing which part of the Dark Forest to stake minions into or to attack. So we want to emphasize player agency in the gameplay. Twilight Tactics is the first time in the history of this IP where unicorns could actually die, but we don't want to make it too risky. So even though unicorns can die in Twilight Tactics, which unicorn in your squad dies is completely under your control. So
I love how fitting that is for Shadowcorns. Like, for the first time ever, unicorns can die. It's the perfect arc, man. It's weird to me. It makes me laugh that people are excited to see their unicorns get sacrificed. Like, I saw Time Traveler, someone joking about how he's not afraid to breed donkeys now because he knows he's going to need a pool of them to sacrifice. It's like, damn, that's awesome, but really dark.
Yeah, I've been loving the memes. Like, it's been great. And then the third is, Twilight Tactics is completely on web, on chain, but we didn't want all unicorns to have to be airlocked out of the game to actually play the game. But we do need unicorns to be airlocked out if they are going to have a chance to be burned. So we've found a nice compromise where only your quote-unquote guide unicorn, the one that could potentially be killed, needs to be airlocked out when you form a unicorn party. The rest of the unicorns that you put in that squad could still be in game. So we really want to minimize the amount of unlocked unicorns you need to have to play Twilight Tactics, because we want to, which leads into the fourth point, we want to lower the barrier of entry to play. We definitely learned from throwing shade that having a cost is not the best way to get people engaged. So there is no cost to attack a minion squad or stake minion squads, except for gas fees for transactions, which again, we're going to try and minimize the total amount of transactions you'll need to actually play Twilight Tactics.
Absolutely. And I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about guide unicorns in detail later on, but some quick color around that. Basically, airlocking the unicorns into the game has a lot of benefits. When that original contract was created, we didn't write in a kill function for unicorns, because back then we weren't really thinking about unicorns dying, right? We're just thinking about unicorns breeding and growing the population. So now that we need to have some way to kill them, if they're locked into the game, there isn't like a kill mechanism. So with UX in mind, we really wanted to minimize the amount of unicorns that have to be pulled out of the game, because obviously if they're not locked into the game, then they can't be used for other things like, crafting and breeding and jousting and all that stuff. So just one of those things. We move very fast, and ideas grow, and every so often there's a little bit of a tech debt there, and we have to come up with a creative solution. So really jazzed about the guide unicorns. I think it is a good compromise given all the parameters we have to work around.
So there'll essentially be two gameplay loops in Twilight Tactics, one for Shadowcorn players and one for Unicorn players. Shadowcorn players, more passive. You're going to be mainly staking minion squads throughout the 5 regions of the Dark Forest, and those squads will earn you domination points passively, as well as earn you points when they're in combat with Unicorn squads. And then based on the domination points you earn, you'll earn Dark Marks, Rift Crystals, Unum, and potentially other prizes. Unicorn players, more active gameplay. Players will need to go in, choose which region to attack, form. They'll get a selection of minion squads, choose which one they want to battle, form a Unicorn squad, and earn domination points outside of based on whether they win or lose. Definitely more active. There is no cost to attack, but we will be applying a cooldown on the unicorns used, just to make sure that you can't use the same unicorns over and over again. The cooldown won't be super long, but we do want to give a slight advantage to players who have a lot of unicorns, just so that they can be more active than those that maybe only have not as much.
All right. Shadowcorn players.
So the Dark Forest, there's 5 regions, one for each class of Shadowcorns: Fire, Slime, Bolt, Soul, and Nebula. When you first get into the map, you'll choose which of the 5 regions you want to stake your minion squads into.
So, and just I'm kind of digesting this graphic here. I don't know if can you guys see my mouse on stream, or does it not get captured? Either way. So these little bars in each region, that would be showing the sort of live feed of which region is more dominated by Shadowcorns or Unicorns. So that would lead you to kind of make your decision like, okay, I want to send somebody in. Let's see where I'm going to be most effective, kind of based on this overall spread, and different locations might be more strategic for the specific assets that you're looking to deploy. Do I have that generally correct?
Exactly. You'll see which regions, Shadowcorns are winning based on their domination points, and which regions Unicorns are winning. And, from a player perspective, you'll have to decide, do I help my faction or do I help myself? Because the factions that may need your help may not be or the regions that need your help may not be the regions that give you the most benefits. So
I see.
So
there's this trade-off of what's most beneficial for my asset versus what's most beneficial for my faction. Faction being Unicorn or Shadowcorn. All right, very interesting.
So each region carries some bonuses to them. It'll be bonuses to certain Shadowcorn stats, Unicorn stats, classes, mythic status, and so going back to my earlier comment, a region that has the bonuses that are most favorable to what you as a Shadowcorn player have, or Unicorn player, may not be the region that needs your help at the time. So again, it's how much of a team player you want to be, or do you just go it for yourself? The bonuses in each region are going to change from event to event. So Twilight Tactics, it's going to be not active all the time. It's going to be more of a long event that is on and then off. But we do plan to change certain things between Twilight Tactics events, and what bonuses are in which regions is one of those things that I would expect to change between events, just to keep things kind of new every time we run this.
it makes it feel a little more generative. So, and just to break down the graphic on the right, this is showing like zooming in on one of the regions that's called Slime Pines. Shadowcorns, unicorns have a different spread. And this is showing if you're a Shadowcorn, there's a bonus to the wickedness stat that goes into the calculation of battles. For unicorns, there's a bonus to the speed stat that goes into the calculation. And I guess mythic, that could be on either side, right? A mythic Shadowcorn or a unicorn with mythic parts. Is that how that would be
It's
interpreted?
mainly for unicorns in this case, yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. So your multi-mythic unicorns might come in handy for Twilight Tic Tacs. Is that what you're trying to tell me here?
Exactly.
Ah, okay. Very good. Um, wow, super cool. Okay.
Um, so the event begins with Shadowcorn holders staking their minions into the Dark Forest, and to do this, they're going to need to form minion squads. A minion squad consists of a Shadowcorn and up to 10 minions. The 10 minions could be of the same class or different classes, but their stats are going to be buffed by the quality of the Shadowcorn that's selected. Because there's so few Shadowcorns, the same Shadowcorn could be used for multiple minion squads. And
Is
we're
there a
going to try
limit on that? Is it like up to 10 or just kind of minions are the limiter?
Minions are the limiter. Think of it as the minions doing the actual dirty work while the Shadowcorns are back in the shadows commanding them.
Like a general kind of thing. Yeah.
Exactly. And there's no chance for Shadowcorns to be killed. It's the minions who are going to, take all the casualties in this war.
Got it. Okay. That makes sense.
So, once you fill, a squad with a Shadowcorn and up to 10 minions, you can now stake it. Now, because of how many minions you can make over time, staking one by one, and it takes a transaction to stake, would be pretty cumbersome. So, as long as you have the minions, you could stake the exact same squad formation as many times as you have minions. So, in the case where if I say use a Volt Shadowcorn and 10 Volt minions for a squad, and I have 67 minions total, I could deploy 6 of that same squad in the region in one transaction.
Ah, okay. I see. And that kind of makes sense because I think in general, most people will kind of gravitate towards making husks and therefore minions that kind of match the class. Like if you only have 2 Shadowcorns, then obviously you only have 40% of the classes available to you. So you're probably going to make the stuff that's more efficient for you. So you're likely to have more that match together. And you're like, all right, I have a shitload of minions that are all the same because that's all that I can make. So now you can deploy those squads all in one transaction. That's pretty slick, dude. Seems pretty well thought out. I like that.
Yeah, there may be. We're still kind of working with engineering to see if there's a cap to how many squads. But the idea is that there's going to be. You could stake a lot of squads at once.
Yeah, I mean, even being able to do up to batches of like 5 or something is still incredible compared to only one by one.
Exactly. And so, once you staked your squads into a region of the Dark Forest, they're going to start producing domination points passively over time. But you'll see which squads are staked in which region by clicking from each of the 5 regions. That way, as the battle is progressing and you see the tides turning, you can assess where your squads currently are and where you may need to stake more squads later.
So on this graphic, on the right side under my squads, what is the fist? What's that 10,000 and then the 10,000 to 12,000?
So the fist is kind of the damage that your squad can do. The 10,000 is kind of your base damage that the squad does. And then based on bonuses and our formula, that would be the damage range they could do in battle. So when you're forming squads, depending on the Shadowcorn you use, depending on the minions you choose, and which region you're in, and the bonuses in that region, you'll see that power number fluctuate. So you'll be able to be very informed about how to kind of create the a squad that can do the most damage possible based on what you have. And we're still kind of digging into the details of the actual formulas, but it's largely going to be based on the total stats. And this is probably more applicable to the unicorn side. But we want to really put an emphasis on the total stats of unicorn for the purposes of Twilight Tactics, so that higher stat unicorns just do better in general.
Gotcha. All right, let's take a look at the unicorn side.
Yeah, so again, Shadowcorn players, pretty easy. Just stake your minion squads, sit back and watch the mayhem. Unicorn players, it's going to be a little more active. Going to need to really muster your forces and spend some time killing lots of minions. So
an important note there, maybe this is obvious, but there's a lot more unicorns than shadowcorns and a lot more unicorn holders than shadowcorn holders. So the idea is that we should skew the gameplay to have a slightly more onus on the unicorn side because there's just more people to rally and just more resources that can go into it. And at a certain point, minions kind of are the limiter of battle. And maybe we'll talk about that back and forth a little bit more, but the idea behind that, why it's not always on, it's like you have these war times, and then after there's a bunch of casualties, it's like, okay, there's a break, there's a period of tranquility, everybody rebuilds a little bit, and then another battle breaks out. So there's these back and forth, it's like a battle, and then there's a break period. We're still coming up with a name for the off season. I think period of tranquility is the working name that we've been going with that feels pretty good. So right now we're obviously talking about when Twilight Tactics starts. That's when the battles start, and that's the flow that we're going through right now. So maybe we should have said that more clearly at the beginning, but hopefully that just helps clarify the kind of flow of how this goes back and forth, and the thinking behind unicorns having a slightly more active responsibility to respond to the war efforts of the shadowcorns.
definitely. So as a unicorn player, you'll come in, you'll choose which region you want to attack. And when you choose a region, you'll see 3 of the minion squads that are staked in that region. You'll see kind of what's in the minion squad, what their damage range is. And then based on that information, you can choose which of the 3 minion squads you want to attack. If you're not happy with any of the 3, you can re-roll your opponents, re-roll the list of 3 by paying a small amount of RBW. But here, we're giving you all the information you need to kind of assess what your chances of victory are. You'll know what bonuses of the region you're in, whether your unicorns are going to be strong or weak against the minions in the minion squad. So you'll have a lot of information to process before deciding, okay, which opponent can I most likely beat, and then you could choose and form your unicorn squad.
All right, I'm gonna take a small risk here, Jeff. I want to ask a real time question, and this is just an earnest. I'm seeing this now. How come it's an RBW fee instead of a Unum fee, or the option to do one or the other? Any thoughts around that? And I don't know that Unum's better. I'm just curious.
Our view of RBW is it's more like coins for an arcade or costs that are associated with certain gameplay things, whereas Unum is more about core game upgrades and things like that. And a cost to kind of re-roll your opponents fits more, like cost, fee, that side of things. It'd be different if this were upgrading something. Unum would probably be more appropriate there. But our thinking with RBW is that anything that feels like a cost or a tax or something, we'd like to use RBW for that.
Gotcha. And of course, RBW is a reward for jousting still. So in theory, players should have a little bit more RBW in their pocket than ever before when it was not able to be really obtained through the game loop. So appreciate the perspective on that. It's helpful.
So yeah, once you've chosen your opponent, now you can select your unicorn squad. A unicorn squad consists of 3 unicorns, one of which is the guide unicorn, which we discussed earlier, the one that can potentially be killed, and that has to be airlocked out of the game. So you choose that first, and then you choose 2 other unicorns that could be airlocked in or out, doesn't matter, to form your total squad. But again, like the minions, as you're choosing your unicorns, you'll see the squad. We're going to probably change the UI to like damage, but you'll see your squad damage fluctuate as you're choosing different unicorns.
Right, and this again will be more total stat driven, or because I see power and accuracy, speed, intelligence.
Again, the UI is not
Yeah,
kind of still in the works, so it's going to be total stat driven.
cool. I mean, it's still useful to be able to see the stats here. Just curious about the back end.
And so yeah, so you picked your opponent, you formed your unicorn squad. Now the battle's ready to happen. It'll take a transaction to do the battle. So you'll see the line while the battle's occurring. You'll see the what both sides are, what their power is, what buffs they have, and at the end of the transaction, you'll see which side won, and based on whether you win or lose, that's determines how many domination points each squad or each player gets. Both squads will get domination points no matter what. It's just the winner is going to get a lot more than the loser would.
Right.
And then besides a difference in domination points, winning will affect chances of dying versus losing. So like on the unicorn side, if the unicorn squad wins, we currently are having it that there's no chance of a unicorn dying. And if and the losing Shadowcorn squad would lose all their minions. If the Shadowcorn squad wins, they some of the minions may die, but they may keep some. While there's a chance that the guide unicorn would be killed. So no matter what happens, both squads are going to earn domination points, but the winner will just earn a lot more, as well as be a little safer from having either
fight another day.
Exactly.
Yeah, pretty cool. I like this graphic for some reason. It makes it feel very real. Seeing the Shadowcorn kind of like win domination points. He looks pretty scary. That's pretty cool though. And the idea is that we need minions to kind of die, because that's what signals the end of the Twilight Tactics battle. So you can sort of think of what is the main metric behind the tug of war. Most of that is calibrated around minions. So that's why there's incentives in the Shadowforge to create minions during the periods of tranquility. And then there's way more incentives, aka the rewards you get from battle are much higher compared to the tranquility times, because you want to try to end the battle as quickly as possible, so to speak, from the unicorn side, and kill all those minions. And then we go back and forth. So it might sound like a lot of minion death of like, wow, I lose my whole squad, but you're also going to be able to make a lot of minions. If you only have one Shadowcorn, it does take some time to ramp up. But we have to remember, too, that there's some mythic Shadowcorns out there that are going to be ramping up a lot of production. So there should be a decent amount of minions in the pool ready to fight. I hope all of that was correct, Jeff.
Yeah, and again, activity is going to be key here, because once the Shadowcorn holders stake their minions in the Dark Forest, they could sit back and have those minion squads produce domination points passively over time. And if unicorns aren't engaging, it's going to be the Shadowcorn holders that are going to get most of the rewards. But if the unicorns players can unite, come in, and kill minion squads a lot earlier on, they're going to take a larger share of the reward. So the unicorn holders are going to have to do the heavy lifting to win this battle. The shadowcorn holders, once they stake their minion squads, they've done their job. So, again, engagement and activity will be key to winning.
Forgive me if you said this and I just missed it. Do we have kind of like a rough calibration of how often unicorns will die? Let's say you lose the battle. What like general percentage of the time would you expect the guide unicorn to die? Is it like 50%, 10%, 1%? Like that kind of magnitude might be helpful to visualize.
I personally, since players have the choice of which asset or which unicorn dies, I wouldn't want to go lower than 10%. But we're also talking about like the future, and in the first season of Twilight Tactics, only tier 1 minions will be available. In future seasons, we'll have higher tier minions, and we're in talks about potentially seeing could higher tier minions increase the chance of a unicorn dying if the battle's lost. Again, we want to kind of lock down what we're able to do before we make those design decisions, but I definitely wouldn't have it be less than 10%, and I definitely would be happy to see it go larger if we find good designs to make that happen.
Okay. Cool. I think that's a good example of one thing that isn't set in stone yet. Still modeling things out and getting a sense of what feels appropriate. But appreciate that calibration point. So cool. Let's talk rewards, man. This is, all that is fun, but this is the real exciting part here. What do we got to win the battle for the Dark Forest?
So at the end of the event, whichever faction or side controls the most regions of the forest wins. So 3 to 5, whichever if a side controls 3 or more regions, they would win. We are exploring the idea of ways unicorns can win early, before the end of the event, because they can effectively, outside of the cooldown for unicorns used in this, there's really nothing stopping from unicorn players continually attacking. So we're thinking of ways to potentially have unicorns get to victory earlier if they're engaged enough and active enough, but that's not set in stone yet. But at the very least, at the end of the event, the side that has the most regions wins. So what rewards you get all comes down to the domination points. So with domination points, for unicorn players, you could earn daily unim, rift crystals, loot boxes. From shadowcorn players, it would be unim, rift crystals, and dark marks. And then domination points serve as points for the shadowcorn and unicorn Twilight Tactics leaderboards. So for the daily rewards, it's going to be similar to what we're planning for Shadowforge, where there will be a finite amount of rewards per day for players, and your share of those rewards are based on the proportion of your domination points compared with everyone else's. So if, as a unicorn player, let's say I've earned 1% of all domination points of unicorn players for that day, I will get 1% of the rewards. Works the same way with shadowcorns. Each faction will have their own leaderboards. And this is, again, due because of the population imbalances and stuff like that. It'd be really difficult to have one leaderboard for both. So we're just going to have 2 leaderboards, one for each side. Now,
that makes sense, too, from sort of a faction perspective. If it were a shared leaderboard, I feel like it's nice. It's nice. I like seeing there's the unicorn side keeping track of their tally. There's the shadowcorn side keeping track of their tally. Thinking about the lore, right? Their data files are totally separate. So, sorry, maybe that's too meta. I spend a lot of time thinking about how the unicorns actually operate, Jeff. I'm embarrassed to admit.
No worries. The leaderboards are going to be besides having one for each side, they're going to be a little special in that, there will be rewards on the leaderboard that are guaranteed to drop no matter what, but there's going to be a set of rewards that will only be on your side's leaderboard if your side wins the battle. So, if unicorns win Twilight Tactics for that, event, they will in their leaderboard will have their guaranteed rewards as well as the rewards for winning the battle. If the Shadowcorns win, the unicorns would only get the guaranteed rewards, and it would be the Shadowcorns that get the guaranteed rewards plus the rewards for winning the battle. So, what your leaderboard rewards are will be based on whether you win or not.
That's a great balance. So no, even if you lose, right, you still get something back for your time. So it's not a total loss. That's way too punishing. But there's a pretty strong incentive to, unlock. It's sort of like unlocking the level 2 of the leaderboard if you win. Almost like the upgrading your battle pass, so to speak. We're upgrading the leaderboard if you're able to win. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. So that is Twilight Tactics in a nutshell. Just to kind of break down high level, what you should do is earn domination points by staking minions or using unicorns to attack minion squads. Pay attention to the region bonuses. Stats are really important, but you could amplify how much damage you do if you're matching the minions or unicorns with bonuses on a specific region. Battles are deadly. If you're a Shadowcorn player, expect to lose a good chunk of your minions. And for unicorn players, you expect to lose some guide unicorns if you're depending on how many battles you lose. And then every battle counts. No matter whether you win or lose, you will get some domination points. So, say you pick an opponent you think you could beat, and you have bad luck, you're still going to get some domination points. You're still going to make some progress, but winning just gives you more.
And one note I'd like to add here, just seeing it laid out like this, under the battles are deadly section. I totally lost my train of thought. I just had a senior moment. I'm sorry. Redact it. I lost it. Maybe it'll come back to me. I had something else to add, but it just totally left. Apologies. Is that all right? So we're into question time. Cool. Well, thanks, Jeff. That's really awesome. It's a kind of a complex event, but mostly because it has this back and forth to it. I think when you start to embrace it from just one side, it's not that complicated. There's enough strategy and there's enough difference that it's quite good. Anything else that we want to add? Let me see. I had to go full screen, so sorry, folks. You're going to see the real production value here. Let's see if we've got any questions. Sparkly, I couldn't see questions as we were going along, so if there were any that you collected.
Oh yeah, definitely. We do have a ton of questions here. Thank you so much for everybody and their questions. Again, if you would like to do a spoken question, you want to step out on the stage, please press the request to speak button. That looks like a raised hand, and then once we accept it, you'll be able to get on the stage and ask your question. But for now, we're going to ask the written questions. The written questions thread is in the feedback channel, so you're going to see the Crypto Unicorn Shadowforge AMA thread. You can ask your question there, or you can also ask it on the Town Hall chat. Okay, let's start with the questions on the thread.
So, real quick, right? Yeah. I just remembered what it was. It just came back to me. So under battles are deadly. For the Shadowcorn side, if your concern is like, well, I'm not worried about losing minions, but I'm just putting them in there, and then the unicorns pick the battles, my minions are going to lose every time. The gate is that thing with the 10 RBW where you roll sort of a random set, and the shadow or the unicorn side has to get into that game theory of, what's the value of the reroll versus my chance of playing against these minions? So there will be plenty of opportunities where unicorn folks are like, man, I rolled. I didn't get anything better. And now I have to kind of make a suboptimal choice if I want to play. And some people will do that. So that's the gate that prevents it from just being a unicorn wipe that destroys all of your minions. And
Well,
again, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong there, Jeff.
No, you're not wrong, but it's also important to remember that while staked, your minion squads are earning you domination points over time passively. Unicorns have to be used in battle to earn domination points. So, yes, there's definitely more of an informational advantage on the unicorn side. But even if you lose, if your minion squad loses that battle, you're still getting points that they've earned from you over time. So, that's kind of there to kind of compensate you for the advantage that unicorn players will have.
Gotcha. Cool. Okay. Sorry, Sparkly. Now we can go into questions. Apologize.
No, we're good. That's perfect. We do have a question from Siddhartha Axi Gala. When baby corn burn? I think what he's asking is, can we have child unicorn soldiers? Is that a thing?
No, this is
Thank
again
God.
gonna this is again going to be adult only. The Dark Forest is just way too scary for baby corns.
Okay. Thank you very much, chat. We are not going there. Okay. Next question from Sigarian. At the launch of the Shadowforge and minion minting, will minions have other utility on day one besides leaderboard and a item distribution factor? I guess what they want to know is, before Twilight Tactics, is there anything that people can do with their minions?
No, but that's kind of by design, just because of the population disparity between Shadowcorn holders and Unicorn holders. Twilight Tactics is going to need a ton of minions. It's so the point between now and when Twilight Tactics launches, and between Twilight Tactics events, we'll want Shadowcorn holders to create a lot of supply of minions, knowing that a lot of them are going to be staked and destroyed during Twilight Tactics. And it's one of the reasons why Shadowforge incentivizes the production of minions by giving out the Unim and Dark Mark rewards based on minions crafted that day. We want you to craft as many minions as possible, knowing that a lot of them are going to be lost in the Twilight Tactics event.
Think of this as like, this is all Act 2, Twilight Tactics and Shadowforge. So we're rolling out Act 2 of the Crypto Unicorns, gameplay storyline in two pieces. So this is part of what I said at the very beginning, that you could almost, I think in esports terms, it's sort of like, quote, season 0. This is like our Nexus kind of genesis point. And then after this initial phase, it'll be more active and you can start to do stuff with minions. And minions might get more robust. As Jeff said, we could add tier 2, tier 3 minions and have a little bit more depth. But this is just the starting point. There's a lot of blockchain work involved with this. So it's pretty important that we deploy step by step, because blockchain stuff, you really just want to get it right and be able to test foundations and build incrementally, I think. So valid, but all part of the plan, I think, is the summary answer to that question.
Yeah, and I think lore-wise it also works, because to me it does seem like there's a parallel between Shadowcorns and Unicorns. This would have been the Shadowcorn Summer of Love if Shadowcorns knew how to love, which they don't.
Yeah, exactly.
Lore, baby. It's all coming together. Okay, Illis is asking, will there be a video example or walkthrough on how to use the Minion Forge site? And the answer to that is yes. It's already available on Zendesk. You can check that out in the announcements channel. We have linked that right there. And you can also just search for it. Type Shadowforge on our Zendesk, and you should be able to see the Shadowforge guide. Next up, a question from Pretty Baloney. Will a corn have to be bred a certain number of times to be eligible to be sacrificed or burned? I think the answer to this is no. But how do you feel about having incentives for corns who have been bred quite a number of times?
Right now we have an incentive when gems and gemworks get released to have fully bred unicorns. From the last presentation, one of the aspects is that unicorn will have 8 gem slots, but to get all the slots, they'll need to have, or to unlock all the slots, they'll have to be bred all 8 times. For right now, we feel that's going to be good enough to try and push for breeding, at least for the good quality unicorns. I think one thing that we're kind of more interested in is like, what if a mythic unicorn gets killed, and that's something, especially for like an incentive to get rid of the single kind of mythic unicorns. Between that and fully bred, I think we're more interested in kind of seeing what could we do to try and get some single mythics to be killed.
Yeah,
and we may look at incentives on that.
That works well for 2 reasons. One, because as we have people chase for multi-mythics, single mythics are just the fallout, and they have there's like 25,000 of them. We're coming up on 30,000 before too long, and that's totally natural. And the other interesting facet is that many of those single mythics are also pretty low stat unicorns. You probably wouldn't put it in the donkey bucket because it's a single mythic, but functionally it's kind of a donkey. So it's just a great spot to get rid of these unicorns that really don't have a lot of utility, and it's hard for us to crank up the utility and rewards for single mythics because it really impacts the economy when there's so many of them, when it's like every player has multiple single mythics instead of, I was one of those people buying single mythics for an ETH a while ago thinking that they were going to be a little more scarce. So yeah, love that idea. I don't think it's locked in stone, but that was a suggestion from the community, and I think this is a great first step into finding a meaningful sync for single mythics. Some sort of extra reward. I don't know what the reward would be. That's also another question. But
yeah, well, to talk rewards a bit. One thing that unicorn players will get when they lose a unicorn is that they're going to get a unicorn soul. Unicorn souls will be one of the more rare crafting items needed for really high tier gems. So to get the best gems, you will need unicorn souls. And shortly after Twilight Tactics launches, we do plan to have a feature where you could just sacrifice a unicorn on your own if you want to. No need to.
Is this the glue factory?
Yes.
Good animal farm moment.
Exactly. So yeah, definitely. Unicorns that die during Twilight Tactics, you will be getting unicorn souls that you can then will have when you try to craft high tier gems. But obviously, the RNG aspect of Twilight Tactics, like not being able to control when a unicorn dies, is not going to be sufficient. So there will come the glue factory soon after Twilight Tactics.
All right, slay. Okay, so mythic unicorn, single mythic holders, be prepared for a unicorn to have the Tony Stark Iron Man treatment if this does push through. Okay, let's have another question from Pretty Baloney. Will Tier 3 mats acquire any more use cases once Shadowcorn stuff goes live? I'm not sure exactly which Tier 3 mats she's referring to.
Yes. For I think one I'm assuming Tier 3 class and building mats. I think when we talk about tribes and we talk about gems, it's easy to not appreciate how much that will do to the item economy of the game. And while there will be new items needed to upgrade tribe buildings and craft gems, definitely we're going to be using a lot of the existing items to try and get balances better under control. So yeah, there's definitely going to be loot boxes, because that's a way for us, if we wanted to reward in-game items that aren't on chain. The only way we could do that is if we give out a loot box. So when Twilight Tactics launches, any in-game items we want to reward, we would need to put in a loot box and give that out and have players open it in-game.
All right. Thank you so much for your questions. Pretty baloney. Next up are a couple of questions from Zyori, but before that, quick time check. We have 8 minutes left. So let's try to fit in all the questions. Is the Shadowforge... Yeah?
I'm okay to go over if everyone else is. I feel like this is like a deep thing that people have a lot of questions. Jeff, I don't want to speak for you or your schedule, but especially with like deployment coming, I feel like this is a good time to fill some dead air, so to speak.
No, definitely. And just to note about how Laguna operates, like usually there are morning meetings, but on deploy day we get rid of those so that people could be heads down getting the deploy out. So this being a deploy day, my Thursday morning is wide open, so we could go as long as we want.
Cool. All right, yeah. So let's go for it, Sparkly.
Love it.
Sorry to speak for your time as well, I guess, but hopefully you're down also.
That's literally my job. I stay in this Discord for fun. Okay. But Zyori, we have, is the Shadowforge site mobile browser compatible? Is it?
Yes, I believe so. I didn't do it on my phone with a mobile wallet, but I did shrink the browser down to mobile size. I'm sure there was other testing done beyond that, just speaking anecdotally from when I've played with the site. So, Jeff, maybe you have a little more color on that, but
I actually don't know.
Yeah. I don't see any reason why the mobile wallets wouldn't work like normal. But it's a good question. I can jot that one down and see. As a general rule, obviously we're not optimizing for mobile first, but in this case, since it's on web, I think it is certainly a valid question, which is what leads me to say I suspect it works, but did not do it myself.
Zyori, I'll get back to you with the answer to that question for sure. So we can double check with the rest of the team. Okay, another question from Zyori. Are there any concerns that the population of minions are not enough? What is the target minion population before the first season? And if we don't hit those numbers, will minion output per ritual and summon be improved as an option?
So there's a couple of things to that. We definitely understand that there's a risk that the population disparity is just going to be too great to kind of balance. The first season of Twilight Tactics is going to be really kind of informative. We've generally been thinking, it's great if we can get, close to like 100,000 minions produced by the time Twilight Tactics goes live based on population numbers that we've ran. But in the case that it's not enough, we do have some plans. Rituals being, most rituals being NFTs, we could always add more rituals that are more productive, and so you can purchase those and do and create more minions that way. If it's a matter of not enough Shadowcorn players, if minions are fine, but we find that even passively, there's just Unicorn players are way more active than we thought they'd be, and they're just smashing through all the minions. We do have ideas of kind of having the highest tier minion being like the poor man's Shadowcorn, where very, very light Shadowcorn functionality. Shadowcorns would always be way better, but it's a way to get that population higher. But we also have, we talked about the region bonuses. If we find that minion squads are getting smashed too much in the next Twilight Tactics event, we could just make the minion bonuses better on the regions, so that minion squads are stronger, won't lose as much, will last longer. So we have a couple different things. Oh, and then finally, we could always give out more Shadowcorn loot boxes to fund husks to players so that they can make more minions. as a way to try and buck up the Shadowcorn side if the disparity is too large. So we have a couple tools that we could use to try and even it out. It's just it's just really hard to say what's going to happen in that first event. But it's definitely going to be informative. We're going to have a lot of analytics, and we have a lot of tools on our side to address what happens in after that first event.
All right, glad to know that we have a lot of levers that we can play with on that end. Ooh, some interesting questions from Bahis. Maybe I missed it, but what kind of impact will unicorn stats have? Feels like there's an opportunity to have symbiosis between classes. For example, standard RPG archetypes come to mind. How do you feel about that?
So, one of the challenges in this is that unicorns have this set of stats, minions have this set of stats, and they have to interact together. So we are kind of mapping out which unicorn stats and classes correspond with which Shadowcorn class and stats. And more information about that will be made available once everything's we're 100% comfortable with everything. But yeah, we are going to set up kind of an art, kind of rock, paper, scissors kind of thing where certain unicorn classes and stats are good against certain Shadowcorn classes and stats and vice versa. So there definitely will be that element to it. But again, that's going to be reflected when you're composing your, from a unicorn player, when you're composing your unicorn squad. You'll have already chosen your opponent, so you'll know kind of as you're selecting unicorns and you're seeing your damage meter fluctuate based on unicorn selected, that RPS kind of aspect will be incorporated. So you'll be informed as you're forming your squad. But again, you'll want to pay attention to what region you're attacking as a unicorn player to see which bonuses you're going to benefit the most from. On the Shadowcorn side, because you're not actually selecting an opponent, you won't really have as much strategy. But again, the region you choose to stake your minion squads into, you could optimize to try and have your damage be the highest possible. The unicorns will always have an advantage because they get to choose their opponent.
All right. Next up, how are battle reports presented? Is it like an instant splash screen or something like the jousting video?
We're the current UX, and again, can be subject to change. Is that there'll be a history. Like if you're a Shadowcorn player, we're planning to kind of have you come in, look at which of your minion squads were defeated, what unicorn squads defeated your minion squads, and then what damage they did, what points they earned. That's on the Shadowcorn player side. The unicorn player will get that feedback as part of their attack, right? Because they're the ones that are actively attacking and get that results immediately. But Shadowcorn players being more passive, they're gonna do it more like a battle report kind of list of battles historically that they could visit and see to get that information.
All right. So thank you so much for those questions, Bahis. Let's move to Fat Ivan. Are we fighting against ourselves if we own and deploy both unicorns and shadowcorns?
From faction point of view, yeah, kind of. The only thing is, only one faction can win, so it depends on whether you want the Shadowcorn leaderboard to have the extra rewards or the Unicorn leaderboard to have the extra rewards. And in that case, playing both sides is kind of counterproductive. But we're not putting anything in place to prevent you from playing both sides if you wanted to.
Yeah, so I keep in mind that some of this faction warfare, right? This is where that whole migration of Unum, a big part of that went into opening up the door for some rewards to have some of this stuff and like the Shadowcorn attacks and various other things. So all those rewards that are now part of this gameplay loop are kind of what incentivize you to want to get a piece of those rewards from participation. And both sides get, as we've gone through at different points, you get rewards and points just for participating, even if you fail or your group or your squad or your army is not that powerful. So it skews more. The more Shadowcorns you have, the more you want the Shadowcorns to win, is basically the most I could summarize it. If you're a holder like me that's mostly unicorns and one Shadowcorn, it's more like, yeah, it's fun. You can participate. If you have literally one common Shadowcorn, I mean, your production relative to the whole isn't that large, because that's like the smallest share of the pie that you can have. So it's kind of designed to be that way. So if you only have one, then it's cool. You get to participate in the game loop. You can, peek into the Shadowcorn faction, but in that case, you would really be more on the unicorn side, even if you did have a Shadowcorn in the race. Maybe just a hedge. That's the way you could think of it. Now, if you've got 10 Shadowcorns, I think you're probably a little bit more in this like, whoa, let's go kick some ass, boys. Like, let's win this leaderboard. Let's get some extra rewards, because as you've seen with Shadowforge, a lot more of these dynamics now are relative. It kind of scales with participation, right? Like the prestige score is a perfect example of that, where your representation of the rewards is your percentage of all the prestige that's out in the wild. So it kind of depends on how active you are relative to how many other people are active, which I think is a more dynamic way to try to balance the economy, instead of the sort of, for lack of a better term, kind of like linear progression reward systems that we've done a lot in the past. Again, feel free to correct me if any of that was wrong.
No, that sounds correct to me.
All right, love it.
Good question.
We do have a question about minions. Do minions have RNG stats, meaning I have the chance of getting a kick-ass minion from Goliath rolls?
No. We're treating minions as 1155, so we can't really vary the stats. So each minion of the same minion will have the same stats. But we do plan over time to introduce higher tier minions that will have better stats, and like I said earlier, potentially certain other special things like increasing the chance of killing a unicorn if used. Looking into more special stuff like that, but the stats of minions won't vary like they do with Shadowcorns and unicorns.
Yeah, it's more about efficiency with the rituals, right? It's like different trade-offs, but being able to create more minions for a lower cost and that kind of thing. That's
yeah. The ritual NFTs are there more for efficiency purposes. Like if you get a ritual that allows you to produce a minion at 36 husks instead of 50 husks.
Those are your kick-ass minions right there. Those are your cheapest fodder. Those babies are value,
Well, exactly. And if you, you're saving 14 husks, that's a 28% cost reduction. But those 14 husks, if you could do that ritual 50 times before it burns, that's 700 husks you're saving, producing the same amount of minions as if you used the starter ritual. So, yeah, the rituals, at least for right now, for this phase, is definitely more economic oriented and not necessarily combat oriented. Yeah. Once higher tier minions are introduced, though, that's going to change, because while all players will always be able to produce tier 1 minions, there's not going to be that guarantee for tier 2 and above. You will need ritual NFTs for that, and that's when a ritual can become more combat oriented.
All in due time.
All in due time. All right. And Mustafa just wants to confirm. So if a minion unalives, that NFT will be burned in the blockchain.
Good question.
Wait, sorry.
So
Could you
if a
repeat the
minion
question?
dies, does it get burned on the blockchain? Is that basically the question?
I believe for Minion that is the case. For Unicorn, that is probably not going to be the case. But I don't have. Nothing's nailed down there yet. But
So what, like, are you saying the unicorn might go into a pool or something for later instead of just being totally burned, or?
Do they get like a cremation process?
uh, like a burn address that we keep them there just in case we want to do anything creative down the road. Is kind of the
Okay.
current thinking,
Oh,
but
funky.
I
nothing's
see.
been set in stone yet. So
It's like the glue factory's backyard where you send them and they're kind of in
Oh.
queue to be in the factory, but you could still yank them out of the field if you need to. Is that the kind of?
you can imagine a world where like these burned unicorns resurface as like PvE enemies in the future game mode or
Oh.
something like that.
Oh, I like that.
Again, this is not alpha. This is just
just ideas.
Just-
Yeah,
one
but
of
yes,
something.
just
many ideas
ideas.
that have been discussed.
I think the point is that, like, instead of literally obliterating the unicorns and sending them to a burn address where they can never be touched again, they will be effectively burned, taken out of the supply. As a player, you lose control of it. But what we're saying is we're probably not going to light them on fire, and we're open to some creative ways to somehow integrate them again in the future. Is that a fair summary?
potentially yes.
Yeah, potentially. Asterisk, hashtag, maybe.
Mayhaps. Like JBP3 has a request. Can we get a Shadowcorn kill counter somewhere?
Oh, like how many unicorns have been killed? Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, something cool like that.
I mean, I see here that comment and picture kind of like StarCraft 1 style, the hero marine. You see that kill count even on the individual little fodder units, and occasionally you get 20 minutes in and you're like, whoa, this marine's killed 15 Zerglings. Like, this guy's a hero. Give this guy a trophy. Like, keep him in the back line, that would be a funny / cute little just like kill count thing to be able to brag that you got this unicorn that's whomping minions or vice versa. Like who's the Shadowcorn that has killed the most unicorns? Even if it's not a leaderboard, it's a funny stat that's worth like kind of a flex over. That's a great vanity. I don't even want to call it a leaderboard. It's a great just vanity stat.
Yeah, definitely.
Great idea. Okay, another question by Sigarian. How are minion squads created? Is it just random groups put together, or is this going to be manually created by each Shadowcorn player?
A Shadowcorn player creates the squad themselves, so they'll choose a Shadowcorn, and then they'll select up to 10 minions. It could be 10 of the same minion or 10 of total of more than one minion. It's up to them, but they'll have full control as to what minions go into a squad that they stake. But yeah, it's going to be important to make sure that you're paying attention to the bonuses from the region that you're staking into, so you can get those damages bonuses based on the minions and the Shadowcorn that you choose.
All right. A question for our spreadsheet warriors. Will there be a replay or activity log for every battle that happened so people can check trends?
On the Shadowcorn side, there will be. We'll need to check about the unicorn side. Our thinking was unicorns, because they're there at the time the battle's won. They have less use of a battle log than the Shadowcorn players who aren't there at the time of the battle.
Right, like there's no automation for you. Like the unicorn, you do it and then you see the result immediately, so you always kind of know what happens. But for Shadowcorns, it's much more set it and forget it, so to speak, where you stake your stuff, you walk away, you come back, whatever, 3 days later, you want to see a log of everything that happened. Without that log, you literally have no clue what happened. It's not even a LARP. It's just
exactly. But we could look into whether unicorns will have a battle log as well. I know for sure we want to do it for Shadowcorns. I'll have to look to see what our plans are for unicorns in a battle log.
All right. I think we can do around we have maybe around 3 to 5 more questions. Here's another one. Would we be interested in a leaderboard that counts the number of unicorns burned?
I certainly like the idea of having a ticker, like even a Dune dashboard. Like, I'm curious in the live count of. It's certainly a stat we'll be tracking. I assume, Jeff, of like we want to know how many unicorns are being burned, so we can validate this thing. So, to that degree, yes. I don't know about a leaderboard.
I think we'd want Shadowcorn players to have more control as to attacking, because right now, we've planned it so that it's only when a unicorn player loses that they have a chance to lose a unicorn. And Shadowcorn players can't directly attack a unicorn squad, so we could do a leaderboard, but it'd be largely outside the control of people. And I think we'd want more control before we do something like the leaderboard, but a ticker makes perfect sense in this case.
Yeah. The main benefit, of course, is like, every time you win, you get extra rewards. So, that is the leaderboard, so to speak, is the more you win, the more rewards you get. It's just instant instead of being something that you would get at like the end of the season, so to speak. But yeah, the ticker is cool. It's a great, even just season to season, I love these little vanity things of giving the community the opportunity to be like, all right, we're gonna get more than last time. It gives you like just these base points to play around with and stuff. Flexes. It's all about the flex.
Exactly. Now, if we made it so that there's a chance a unicorn could be killed even if they win the battle, that may change my ideas about the leaderboard, but I don't know if we want to go that far.
Yeah. That'd be radical.
It would be. Okay, another question. How will the distribution of captured Unim work? Will it be dependent on the rarity of the Shadowcorns, and what is the release schedule for distribution?
So, so you'll earn Unim and the other rewards based on the domination points earned within, the 24-hour period, midnight UTC to midnight UTC, and then you'll be able to claim those rewards the next day. We do have, and I'm sure LG Rob can correct me if I'm wrong, but for those rewards that go unclaimed, if they're not claimed within 7 days, they get rolled back into the next day's pool, or so you do have a certain amount of time that you'll need to collect your rewards by, but the idea is based on the domination points within the day, compared with domination points earned by everyone else on your side, that'll determine how much Unim, how many Rift Crystals and loot boxes you can claim the next day.
All right, another interesting question here. So, background. Dictus Revenge was asking about what if I had a Shadowcorn posse so tough that no group of unicorns could beat it, and he was asking, wouldn't it make sense to give some of the RBW reroll costs to the Shadowcorn squads that cost a reroll, as though Shadowcorn squads might never get a chance to fight, so no domination points from battle?
So, well, two things. One is, even if I have a unicorn squad and I attack and lose, I still will get some domination points. So it's not like they won't get domination points. But secondly, for Shadowcorn or minion squads that win a battle, there's still a chance for some of their minions to die, even if they win. Now, they're not all going to die like if they lose, but in the case of a Shadowcorn squad or a minion squad that I attack and I lose against, I may still pick off one or two of their minions, which would make that Shadowcorn weaker. So even if there's this just dominant minion squad, after a couple of failed attacks, it should get weaker and weaker as some of those minions get picked off.
That makes sense. They get chipped away at, so to speak. So you won't have this like invulnerable squad, because when you win, you still take a little damage. You often won't take a flawless victory, to use Mortal Kombat terms. So for the second part of his question, though, this is interesting about the reroll RBW. I think his concern is like, okay, I was an early adopter in Shadowcorns. I got some mythics. I'm ready to go in. What if everybody sees my shit and is like, oh God, that's worth a reroll, and I get rerolled more than everyone else? So my Shadowcorn minions get way less battles than the other minions would, all things equal. Is there like...
Well, my thing is, yeah, you're getting fewer battles, but you're still producing domination points passively over time while you're staked in the region.
I see.
Those minion squads that are defeated earlier on will have produced fewer domination points passively.
And eventually, the unicorns will have to fight your squad anyway to end Twilight Tactics, right? Twilight Tactics ends. It's not. Is it when all minions? It's not when all minions die, right? Or is it?
No, I mean, for one thing, it's going to be time based.
Okay.
Let's say it's 3 weeks or a month. And at the end of that time, whichever side controls the most regions wins. Like I said, we are thinking of ways of how can unicorn players end the war early. And it could be that they kill all or most minions or whatnot. But we're still exploring that. But
yeah, but if they didn't end it early, then you could have a minion squad that's like, all right, I staked this thing, I got some passive points, but I really didn't get in that many battles because all these puny unicorns were scared of my minions, and then Shadowcorns won. So yeah, you got the extra rewards from the leaderboard, but it's an interesting thought. I don't know. For some reason, I like the idea of the kickback of the RBW. Like, we take 10, there's, I think, 3 squads that pop up? So maybe each one gets a single RBW, Hey, throw this guy a freaking bone here, Jeff. All right. He's been holding this Shadowcorn for a year. Something to think about. To me, that's a very interesting suggestion, but I don't know where that RBW goes. If we need it elsewhere, maybe that's hard, but kickbacks are cool. Sometimes it's a nice, give him 0.1, dude. Just give him a gesture.
Yeah, I'll bring it up and see what we can do.
Sorry, I feel bad. I shouldn't dogpile on you, and we're kind of... This is sort of like a live workshop, though. Honestly, these ideas are still pretty fresh, and like we've been molding this stuff. So I appreciate all these really great questions. I mean, this is kind of like real time, just spitballing here, which is exactly what we wanted to get into. So really appreciate everybody that's hanging out with us.
Definitely,
100%. Okay. Another question: will we be able to deploy more minions into squads where only a few minions have died? I guess to replace their ranks or something.
That's not currently planned. For one thing, we do want the ability for a minion squad to be whittled away, like discussed, like we discussed. But also, there's nothing stopping, a minion squad that's defeated. Once a minion you could stake as many minion squads into the Dark Forest as you want. To us, it's less important about reinforcing existing squads rather than, if you have the minions for it, just stake some more minion squads into the Dark Forest.
Right, because you can use the same Shadowcorn. So yeah,
yes.
Keep in mind, Shadowcorns are, because they're such a finite resource, you could in theory be a singleton Shadowcorn holder and just buy a bunch of husks or minions from people that are listed, and then use that same Shadowcorn to stake a shitload of minions and get a bunch of rewards, right? That's another cool part about this loop that I guess we didn't specifically call out, but there's an opportunity for this layers in this, let's call it a supply chain of this marketplace, right? That's the beauty of having the Shadowcorns. They make the husks, then you get these rituals. You can buy rituals, you can buy husks, you can sell different parts. Depending on what assets you have and how much time you want to put in, you can exist at a different point in that supply chain and take different exits at different points as part of your economic loop. And that also presents opportunities for other people that say, hey, I don't need more Shadowcorns. I don't want to play that game. I'm happy just to buy minions because they're pretty cheap, and I want to fight on the leaderboard or whatever it is. So this is the first step in that direction of opening up a whole layer to this Shadowcorn economy here, which is also pretty cool. So
Right.
Because of that, the Shadowcorns can be used over and over again when going into the Dark Forest with minions.
And because of that, and then, if I'm just being honest, it's a lot of UI and edge cases and work to put in reinforcement functionality. And since we're letting you stake as many minion squads as you want, for us, the dev trade-off is not worth it. We'd rather get this out earlier than put in a reinforcement mechanic that takes longer to build and doesn't give much in terms of benefit. So that was also kind of part of our decision making.
All right, and let's end the AMA on final question. The question everybody loves: when? Some approximation of a timeline for the launch of Twilight Tactics.
Fall.
Fall.
Yes.
This is I can't give any exact dates, right? But one thing I can say is that, as stated before, think of this as like the last season of The Sopranos or Breaking Bad, where it's one season, but they deliver it over the timeline of 2 seasons. It's an A and a B. That's a little bit what Act 2 is like. So it's, Shadowforge and Twilight Tactics are highly connected. So the goal is to get it out in a somewhat timely fashion so that this whole arc can flow very nicely. There's a lot of moving parts here. We've done a lot of projecting and forecasting with some, I think, reasonable assumptions, but it's always hard to know exactly how things are going to fire in the wild. So we may have to make some small adjustments depending on user behavior, and time will tell. So I don't know. I hope that's fair, Jeff. Fall is a pretty good answer. Relatively soon, before tribes. So I wish I could give exact dates, but we're just not in that position. I want to get scolded here, folks.
Well, exactly, and we need to be mindful of just our incredibly hardworking devs who are doing just an outstanding job on the Shadowforge, and they'll do it here, and this is why we want to try and create a good experience, but not add too many things that we feel are unnecessary or try to get too aggressive with releasing. So, but we have targets we'd like to hit, but just to not create pressure, we're keeping it to not so detailed, just to make sure that we don't create more pressure than we already have.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So we've got a lot going on, right? Shadowforge is being deployed today, and I hope that y'all are going to be really excited about the way the website looks and runs and feels. I think this really, a lot of other games right now, if I can just get on my soapbox for a moment, are taking this hard pivot back into hide all things crypto. We're basically a Web 2 game with sort of some blockchain rails in the back end, private permission blockchains, all this kind of stuff. We're not really going in that direction. We're still full speed ahead of I think we can build a product that's a little bit more robust, that's still kind of this blockchain first. And that's really what the Shadowcorn product vertical is all about. Integration into the game, giving us some positive economic aspects to the loop in terms of burn mechanisms, but additional gameplay that really feels like this kind of Web3 blockchain first product. And the website that the team put together for Shadowforge just felt really great in testing. The art feels good. It's very snappy. It looks good, and you almost expect it to chug, but it really doesn't. It has this great feel to it. Obviously, blockchains are blockchains. If Polygon's slow, then we always have to wait for blocks to resolve. But from a web perspective, the team really put a lot of effort into this release, and I think it sets us off for a great foundation leading into Twilight Tactics. So one foot in front of the other. We're working full steam ahead. The team's been working overtime to get all these releases out and not sacrifice quality. So like Jeff said, it's a testament to hard work, and I'm, watching the countdown timer for the deployment, but very excited for you guys to just get your hands on Shadowforge and start getting to use the Shadowcorns. It's been a long journey of waiting for Shadowcorns to finally come online. So, thank everybody for their patience, and we hope you enjoy it. And I hope we found the right balance of set it and forget it mixed with strategy and proper incentives to contribute to the gameplay. That's to me the core of what we needed to strike here. And I think this concept does that. So, okay, that's it for me. Thanks, guys. Sorry, I just had to get that off my chest.
No, I love it. Okay, chat, you heard that. Your when is about to happen. So y'all better be patient for these last couple of moments. And that is the last question. Thank you so much to everybody for showing up to our Shadowforge and Twilight Tactics Ask Me Anything. We'll see you on the next town hall. So we're going to post a recording of this AMA on our socials if you would like to give it a re-listen, and don't forget to share this with your fellow friends and Unicorn fam who couldn't make it. And if you have burning questions, reach out to our support channels, the mod support channel and the Ask the Devs channel. We already have information out about the Shadowforge on Substack and a summarized article on Medium. We also have a how-to guide on Zendesk. You can take a look at all of that in the announcements channel. And if you have any other questions, just tag me, Sparkly Unicorn. So this has been the Shadowforge and Twilight Tactics Ask Me Anything with LG Jeff and Zyori, hosted by Sparkly Unicorn and with Stealthy Unicorn on Tech.
Spread the good word, gang. There's only 3,000 Shadowcorns. Tell your friends there's only so many out there. I think sometimes people forget that it's a fixed supply collection. So good time if you enjoy Shadowforge to just hype it up. I want to see some screenshots. Give me some content to retweet in the Raidcorns channel. LFG, baby. Ooh, as they say.
Ooh.
Ooh.
Oh, there we go. All right. Everybody have a good day. Thanks again. Bye.
Thanks
Thanks
everyone.
everyone.